Hi, this is Denise Matthew. I hope you're doing well. I'm back again to talk about the new moon happening on May 19th, 2023, and this will be happening at 28 degrees Taurus. It's quite an interesting new moon because I think if we look back at the eclipse that happened at the beginning of the month, it's very similar in that it is heavily weighed to a specific line, and that's the fifth line, where the eclipse that happened at the beginning of the month had a lot of second lines. Now, interestingly enough, this new moon has no second lines at all. We do have almost all other lines represented, but we do not have a second line, which I think is quite interesting, to say the least, because I guess before it was the call that we were receiving, and now it's sort of like a follow-up. And I know it is a new moon, so this is a new beginning and new pathways and those types of things. But a lot of times before we can start a new beginning, we need to let something go or move on. And I think that that would be the key for this new moon. It is about moving on. I like the way it parallels astrology in that it is happening in Taurus, and Taurus is about abundance, material needs, and the things that we need to survive on planet Earth. And it really is sort of lining up with those same types of themes. So it is talking about what we do for money and what we bring to the collective and how we represent ourselves in the collective and what we contribute. The sun and the moon are in the gate 8, line 5, and that's called Dharma. It's an interesting line. And when we have the sun and the moon in this energy, we do have it in detriment. Now, that's not a negative thing. I mean, the thing about exaltations and detriments is that they're just different expressions of the energy. You could say the yin and the yang. So it's basically just a different expression of the energy. And when we have an exaltation or a detriment, it really means that it's just fixing it on one side of the parameter a little bit more. So we're leaning into a theme of something. We're leaning into one theme as opposed to having an openness to both themes. And that's what this energy is talking about. The theme that we're talking about with this is, we look at the gate 8 as half of the 1-8 channel. This is really a channel of your own contribution to the world, what you bring to the world that only you can bring and nobody else can. So this is individual energy, and it's a contribution to the collective that is, again, only coming from you. Individual energy is a mutation that is injected into the collective that changes the world forever. Usually the individuals who place these mutations into the collective, unless they have a lot of individual energy and also maybe a logic or something like that, they sort of can inject their mutation into the collective and then they step back. What this energy is talking about with this new moon is this idea of what can you give to the collective, something that only you can bring to the table, and have you given as much as you can where you are currently, and is it time for you to move on to greener pastures or somewhere where they can appreciate what you have to give. Now, this is not really necessarily about not being appreciated or being overlooked for what you can contribute. This is a place where you might be in a job or a career, or you're in some sort of a place in your life where you have contributed to something very well. You've been well received. People really liked what you had to contribute. They've used it, and yet they're moving on to something new. What happens is now you're moving from individual energy to logical energy, because we know that individual energy is the mutation. It's the spark. The collective is who tends the fire, who continues to have that mutation or that spark burn and to spread into other places in the world. So we have a spark of something that might be a great idea, and then we have it moving into the next stage, which is the collective. And now it's not new anymore. This is something that is in the collective. So this is saying that, have you given your contribution in a specific area? And if you have, is it time for you to move on to something new? And that's the question that this energy is asking us all. Is it time to move on to something new? Because it might be that maybe you're coasting along and you're like, okay, happy, you're not unhappy, or you might, of course, be unhappy as well. But you have this energy of wanting something new because you know that it feels like it's time to leave. And I would say that this energy that we're talking about, this thing that we're talking about that you're meant to move on from, is generally something that you're quite aware of, that you have an idea. There's an inkling that this is the time to move on. And with Uranus having given us so much impetus to move in a new direction, to cut a new path in your life, this is just the next piece of the puzzle. you could say, because if we're looking at how the energy flows, we're flowing from the sacral energy. We go up through the 14-2, which is a tantric energy, right up into the 8-1, which goes right to the throat center. So now we're getting into this manifestation. We've been given the direction for our lives, but now it's time to implement it. Now, what is the benefit to actually moving into this new direction? Well, the benefit based on this is a gate 14 line 5 is really this idea of your resources being allocated in the best possible way. So in other words, everyone comes with a skill set, talent, something that only you can give to the world. But what happens is if you stay in one space too long, that value that you bring may be overlooked. It may be not seen as well as it was in the beginning because you've been in a certain place for a long time. And I think it's not an intentional thing, but people are always, I mean, we know that the way the world is set up with the way social media is set up, for instance, TikTok or I mean, I'll just stick with TikTok because that seems to be the biggest platform these days. It is this idea that a lot of emphasis is put on this viral video and we move on, or this viral TikTok and we move on. And this is sort of the same energy. Now, it may have been that you've been in the same job for 10 years, or maybe even 2, or maybe less, or a career or a relationship or something of those sorts, something tangible. And now it's saying, okay, you have so much more to give to the world, and yet you've outgrown your space. Your space is no longer okay for you to live. It's like a goldfish that has outgrown their bowl and they need to be put into something bigger. And this is what this is saying. You need something bigger. You need to be able to expand, and you also need to be recognized for the contribution that you still have to give. Sometimes what'll happen with individual energy is individual energy is all about inspiration, feeling that you want to change the world. There's something special that you want to give the world. What happens is if you stay within the collective or within one entity for too long, you lose that spark because you start to become conditioned, or you could say even assimilated into this mantra of the collective, which is, A plus B equals C. Now, we all need that. That's very important. That is what makes the world go round. Without the collective and logical energy, we wouldn't have anything to count on. We wouldn't have the structures or any of those things that we know will happen every day. We wouldn't have the grocery store to go shopping at. We wouldn't have the buses to take us to places that we want to go. We wouldn't have planes running on schedule. So it's extremely important energy. But what this is saying is individual energy is completely different. This is a spark. This is a mutation. This is innovation. And you have things to give. And yet right in this particular place, you're too big for what you're too big for where you are right now. You've outgrown it. It's time to move on. You could stay where you are, and eventually it will become even more lackluster, and it'll be something where you start to feel like, oh, I really need to move because this doesn't feel good anymore. It could be something very blatant where people are not appreciative, or it could be something that isn't as blatant. Now, if we tie in a few more themes with this energy, we look at the idea that sometimes people keep us small. And that's another theme that's potential in this. It's not always going to be for everyone, but it is a potential theme in that, well, maybe you're not ready. Maybe why would you want to move? You have this, and this, and maybe it's good, and you have whatever. And yet there's that part of you that knows that you can give more to the world, that you can give more to the collective, that you're not done. You have more to give. And yet this space where you are no longer serves. It could even be, like I said, a relationship. So what have you outgrown? What have you come to sort of the close of that you want to open a new door because it's the right next step for you to take? That's what this new moon is really asking us. What are you ready to move on from? And really to move on and grow. It's not just to move on. I mean, this is about growth, a growth opportunity. And we also still have the 360 in play, which is still continuing to transform us, to give us this pressure to have freedom. So there is that push to do something different, to change, to move on. We also have Venus in the gate 39, line 4. If we look at the gate 39, it is about provocation, but the provocation comes from finding the correct spirit for you. This is finding the right people for you, finding the people that will listen to what you want to contribute, and will sort of go, yeah, that's actually pretty interesting. We want that type of energy within our, company, relationship, whatever it is. The nice thing about Venus in the gate 39, line 4 is this idea that it is giving you the unique ability to strike while the iron is hot. In other words, to intuitively, if you tap into your inner knowing, to intuitively know, okay, this is the right time to move. These are the right people to connect with. This is the right time for me to be recognized for my contribution. Of course, this is projected energy. When we go back to the gate 8 and the full channel, the 8-1, this is really about being asked for your contribution. And if we look at Mercury and also the North Node, they're in the gate 27. Mercury's in the 27, line 5, and the North Node is in the 27, line 3. Now, if we combine those two energies, the conversations become about who can you trust to help you along your path, because we know that when we're making transitions or going to new places, a lot of times we need assistance, because that's part of the way the world works. In that, if you are starting a new job, you have to meet new people and sort of have the support to do your work, I guess, because they need to show you the ropes and whatever those types of things are. With Mercury and the North Node in these energies, who can you trust? Who cares enough about you to give you the advice that will help you the most? And maybe it doesn't help them, but it helps you. And those are big questions. So again, we go back to your inner knowing, telling you and allowing you to feel into who is correct for you. What is the right path? What is the universe trying to tell you? The universe is always trying to give us messages and cues as to how to go forward in life. And it's up to us to figure out what those messages mean for us. And everybody is very specific in how they receive their messages and what they mean. So this is, again, tapping into those messages and understanding that, people might be giving advice, and sometimes it can be something that's a little skewed. So if it doesn't feel correct for you, then it probably isn't. It doesn't mean you can't get good advice, but it does mean that doing your homework to make sure that what they are saying is correct will serve you well. And lastly, if we look from a global perspective, we see that Uranus has moved into the gate 23, and Uranus will be in this energy in the gate 23 right until June 2024. So it's going to be in for a very long time. Uranus is kind of picking up where the nodes left off last year in 2022, from March 15th right until July 30th, 2022. The nodes were transiting in the 2343 or the 4323 channel. Now, this was bringing a lot of mutative energy into the world, and this is related to anything far reaching, anything in the future. And of course, if we look at Uranus coming into the gate 23 now, it gets more specific, because Uranus is it can be related to AI or anything that's related to internet, things that are out there, brand new, things that we've never seen before, the unusual, the strange, and surprising events. Uranus in the gate 23, line 1 is talking about, it's pushing the idea of a mutation taking hold, and maybe not necessarily everybody's on board with it. But the nature of mutation is, again, once it takes hold, it really has a momentum that continues to build up. And this is what Uranus is going to bring to this energy. So going forward, we see the amorality of mutation. Now, amorality is kind of a impactful and powerful word. But when we look at it from the perspective of the gate 23, we're saying that mutation doesn't look at the impact of the mutation. It just looks at the mutation, you could say. So in other words, if we take AI, for instance, and the Chat GPT, which is, in all the news places. I mean, I think that there was a guy that was in Google that just left because he felt that he needed to sort of warn the world about this. And this is nothing to fear. This is just mutation. Everything is always going to be changing. Now, so if you look at when Steve Jobs was bringing out Apple and the iPhone and all those types of things that we we take as being part of life, in as a normal life, any kind of a smartphone now. It doesn't have to be Apple, but anything that is a smartphone, that was not part of life before he brought it into the collective. And so how many people had to shift their life, their path, what they did in their life, their jobs, for instance, because of the invention of this smartphone. And that's the type of thing that we're looking at. So this is really about going back to the same place where we started from. Is it time to move into something where you know that you're going to have more impact in the future? And in the long run, it's going to serve you better. And that's the question. Is it time to move on to something that may be a little bit different? Maybe you're not exactly sure of how it's going to unfold, but the flow of your life is guiding you towards that next big moment. And that's the big question to ask yourself with this new moon. With that said, I hope you have a wonderful new moon, and I will be back again soon. Until then, take care and bye for now.